Just a few weeks ago, I was sitting here with Mr. Andrew Nemi, and he ended up putting a little cameo of me at the end of his vlog, which was really, really cool. Kind of surreal, to be honest, so thank you so much for that, Andrew. That meant a lot. The 3-5 looks really nitty and reg heavy right now, so the best game selection would be to go play the 2-3 500 max bind. It's still a good structure, and honestly there's a lot of money to be made in that game, so I think that's what I'm going to do today. Been trying to get better at game selection, and I think that's a smart move, so we're on the list and waiting for a table. So when I sat down, I looked and noticed that I was under the gun, and normally I wait for the button to pass before jumping in, but the dealer dealt to me without asking, and that was totally fine. I didn't want to make a big deal of it, and so I took my cards, and we're gonna waste no time getting started here because my very first hand I get dealt under the gun is pocket aces. I look around thinking this must be a joke, but I end up raising to $10. It folds all the way around to the cutoff, and I don't know anything about this player, but he decides to 3-bet me, and he makes it $40. Stacks were 500 effective to start the hand because he has me covered, and I just sat down. And silently, I'm jumping for joy inside.
Get your numbers up. I had to get my numbers up.
Folds back around to me, and this is where I think I make a slight mistake on my sizing here. I think I should be raising to about $100, maybe $105, somewhere in that range, maybe even $110, but I decided to go for the size of $120, which I think is a little bit too big here for a 4-bet. Regardless, he decides to flat here, so we're going heads up to a pretty big pot already. So we see a flop of Queen of Hearts, 7 of Diamonds, 8 of Diamonds. Unless he has exactly pocket queens, I don't think his 4-bet calling range consists of much that hits this board, and also having the Ace of Diamonds, I feel very comfortable with my hand, and the only thing that really beats me right now is a set of queens, which if we're getting coolered here, then we're getting coolered. I would imagine he could also flat a hand like Ace Queen suited, and possibly kings, although I really think that we would have got it all in pre if he had kings. But honestly, you never really know at these stakes. So now I have to pick a betting size, and I should be betting about a quarter pot here, I think, in this 4-bet pot out of position, but I went a little bit bigger than I should have. I probably should have put out a bet of $80, but either way, I made it $120, and he actually raises, and he puts out a raise of what I think was about $275. I didn't really pay too much attention because I knew my whole stack was going in regardless. I thought it was very close to covering my stack, so after he raises, I'm very curious what he has, but I hope our aces are good, so I slide in the rest of my chips, and the cards run out. The river does bring another queen, so that did concern me a little bit if he did somehow peel with a hand like king queen, ace queen, but no flushes got there, so I hoped my hand was safe, and I flip it over, and he gives us the nod, checks his cards one last time, tosses them into the muck, and says nice hand, and we get a full double up, our very first hand here at the 2-3 at Talking Stick.
And nails it! What?
In this hand, it folds to us on the button, and we look down at Queen Deuce of Spades, which in this case is going to be more than enough to make the raise on the button.
It's the actual Queen Deuce, the Queen Deuce of Spades, the original Queen Deuce, the authentic one.
So we make it $10 to go. The small blind, who has been limping and had about only $100 in her stack, she decides to make the call. She's been playing extremely fit or fold, and the big blind folds, so we're going heads up to a flop of King 8 King. She checks looking like she wants to toss her hand into the muck before I can even put out a bet, so she checks and I put out a small C bet and she folds very, very quickly. So a good example of us picking up a small pot, but it's big blinds and it's boosting our hourly rate, so we'll take this all day long.
How proud is this really Ron right now?
Oh, he was pretty stoked.
Oh my god.
In this hand, we play another small pot where we raise Queen Jack offsuit from the hijack. The cutoff folds, the button folds, the small blind folds, and the big blind, who's been playing very fit or fold as well, he decides to make the call, so we go heads up to a flop. The flop is 10-6-3 with 2 spades. Looking back at this hand, I think I'd prefer to have the queen or jack of spades before I start bluffing on this board, but there also are a lot of good turn cards we can start bluffing on. Any 9, king, queen, jack, even an ace would be a good bluff card for us. So given the fact that I think this player is very passive post-flop, I think it's okay to start betting here. I hope I'm right about that, but anyway, we do decide to put out a half pot bet, and he checks his cards and quickly tosses them into the muck. In this hand, I finally faced some resistance where I raise with king-queen offsuit from under the gun +1. A lady 2 seats to my left makes the call for $12, the button calls the 12, and then the big blind decides he's had enough and goes all in for his remaining $50 in chips. Now it's back on me, and I don't have a very good holding at this point. With multiple callers behind, I'm just gonna toss this one into the muck. The lady to my left ends up making the call. The guy on the button folds, and they go heads up to see all 5 cards. The lady ended up having pocket jacks. The big blind ended up having pocket aces and got them cracked by her jacks when she flopped a set, so we got out of that hand pretty cheap. In this hand, the lady under the gun limps for $3. The button raises to 12 and it folds to me, and I look down at 2 red 9s. I think I can go either way here with either 3-betting or flatting, and this time I decided to flat, and the lady to my left makes the fold, so we're going heads up to a flop. The flop is all clubs. It's Jack 8 6. I check it over to him and he checks back. After he checks here, I'm trying to assess what kind of hands that would check back. I think any of his made hands would bet this flop, even for a small sizing. I also think a lot of his semi-bluffs would include the ace of clubs, the king of clubs, so I think he either has complete air or a marginal made hand. So we head to a turn card, which is the 7 of diamonds, so now my hand is improved to an open ender and middle pair, which is pretty decent given that he checked the flop. I don't want to give him any free cards here, and I want to start denying equity, so I decide to lead for $15. And just like last hand, he checks his cards, looks at the board, and then shakes his head and tosses his hand into the muck. So we pick up another small pot and add more big blinds to our stack.
Well, very first hand I'm dealt is aces under the gun. The dealer didn't even ask me if I wanted to take a hand, just kind of dealt it even though I was under the gun, so super lucky spot there, amazing. I'm not sure what the guy had. I'm guessing kings? Nothing else really makes sense. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really love seeing the queen on the flop, given I would expect him to just shove kings pre, so that leaves him to really just like ace king, which is very unlikely because I have aces, or ace queen suited. Maybe he was getting creative and spicy with jack 10 suited. Maybe he had flush draw, so there's some hands he could have in there, but really in these types of games, I just don't see him having anything other than kings there. I'm at a table where this feels like I'm back at my 1-2 days over at Wild Horse Pass, where you really can get away with just blind aggression and you can't really go wrong just being extremely aggressive and just betting very exploitatively and basically only letting up when you see them fight back because you know they have a strong hand if they fight back at you. Otherwise, we can just keep the gas on. A crazy good start here. I don't even think we've been playing for an hour. We're already above $1,000, so we completely doubled our stack, which is nice. So I'm gonna head back in there and I'm gonna try to keep taking advantage of this very passive table. All right, let's get in there.
In this hand, it folds all the way around to me on the button, and I look down at king 3 offsuit. This isn't a very great hand at all, but I've been able to get away with raising my button pretty liberally in this game, and so I'm gonna bump it up again, and I make it $10 to go. I think they're starting to get a little bit sick of my raising because the small blind calls and the big blind calls, so we go 3 ways to a flop. The flop came queen 7-3 with all spades. They both check it over to me, and luckily on this board, this is a hand that we can continue betting here. We have the king of spades and a pair, which is going to be good enough to bet, especially against these opponents, and especially because people get very scared of monotone boards. People get very scared of flushes, even though it's pretty hard to flop a flush. So we can use all that to our advantage, so we decide to put out a bet of $15, and they both fold pretty quickly. Another short but sweet hand for you here, and sticking to our aggression, there's a raise from the cutoff to $12. He's to my immediate right. I look down at the beautiful ace 10 of hearts, and I love 3-betting this hand, especially on the button, so I 3-bet and I make it $30 to go. Folds back around to him, and he tanks for about 30 seconds or so, quite a bit of time before he decides to say nice hand and tosses his hand in the muck, and we pick up another small pot. In this hand, the under the gun straddles on to 6. It folds all the way around to me in the small blind, and I look down at pocket 7s. I debated just limping and having the other two come along, but the player who was straddling was pretty aggressive, and there's a lot of times where people limped when she was on the straddle, and then she would raise pretty big, so she was defending her straddle pretty liberally. So I thought the best play here was to raise, because when people raise, she did let her straddle go a fair amount of the time as well. So I make it $20 to go, hoping that'll just get the job done and take this pot down pre-flop, but the big blind decides to put in the call for 20, and the straddler defends her straddle, so we're going 3 ways to a flop, and the flop was absolutely terrible for us. The flop was ace, queen, jack, all clubs.
Correct reaction.
On this board, out of position against 2 players with very wide ranges, I think I'm just going to check and give this one up. So that's what I do. I decide to check. They both check, so we head to a turn card, which is the 9 of diamonds. I check it over again. The straddler puts out a bet, and I decide to put in the fold and give up this hand and move on to the next one.
Alright, well, first hour, extremely eventful. Second hour, extremely uneventful. I played just a handful of hands, just trying to stay patient, but even the hands I did play, they didn't even make it past the flop on most of them. I have a workout session I need to get to in just a bit, so probably stay for about another hour, see if we can build our stack up even more and end on a positive note. I think I'm sitting at about $940 right now after just losing a little pot with pocket eights, but we'll get back on the grind.
In this hand, the same lady puts on the straddle under the gun. Next to act makes the call, and a player in middle position makes the call for $6. I'm in the small blind, and I look down at pocket aces. I don't want to raise too small here and go multi-way. I also don't want to raise too big and get everyone to fold, so I decided on the amount of $30. The straddler folds, next to act folds, and sadly, the player in middle position also makes the fold, so we do pick up a few chips there, and our aces live to see another day. In one of the very last hands I play, a new lady had sat down to my immediate right. She was playing a very wide range of hands, got caught bluffing a bunch of times, wasn't afraid to put money in the pot, and was there to play some poker hands. So knowing all this, she limps the cutoff, and I know she has to have a very wide range here. I look down at ace-3 offsuit on the button, and I would love to isolate and play a pot against her in position, so I make it $15. It folds to her, and she snap calls my raise, which screams a lot of weakness to me. The flop comes 9-6-5 with 2 diamonds. She checks it over to me, and this board smashes her limp calling range. I think any Broadway cards she's raising, any ace she's raising, so these middling cards just hit her range so hard. I'm happy to check here and see what the turn brings, so that's what I do. I check, and the turn is the 9 of clubs. She decides to lead into me for almost a pot-sized bet, and she makes it $25. I don't love this sizing. Knowing how she plays, and especially with the 9 pairing here, I could still be ahead of a lot of her air, so I'm not going to go anywhere just yet, and I make the call. The river is an ace, but it's the ace of diamonds, so it brings in the flush. She checks it over to me, and I probably did one of the nittiest things I've done, especially her having such a wide range. She most likely has total air. I think a good play here might be to bet small and induce her to do something because she was definitely capable of bluffing. However, I make top pair here. There is some scary stuff out there, and the flush comes in, and she's capable of trapping as well, so I'd hate to bet here for value with my weak ace and then get check raised. That would be an absolute disaster. And if she has absolutely nothing, like I think she has a lot of the time, betting here doesn't accomplish anything as she's folding all of her hands. So I decide to check, and she says, I can't win, I missed my straight. My last hand of the night, I just flip over my hand, and we take it down and win our final pot of the night.
Welcome.
Alright, well, once again, pretty great session here at Talking Stick. I like this pattern that we've developed here. Luckily, we've hit some huge hands, got some huge hands, and gotten paid. Got some nice double ups. So we were in the game for $500 and we cashed out with $885 for a profit of $385. Great session today, and I'm pretty happy with the results. I hope you guys enjoyed the vlog today. If you did, would you do me a huge favor and go all in and like, comment, and subscribe? It would mean the world to me. Next vlog coming up is I'm headed back to Austin to play in their huge tournament series coming up, and I'm really excited about that. So a lot of exciting things coming and a lot of fun vlogs that will be in the works shortly. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed the vlog. Remember, we're just getting started and it's only up from here. I'll see you guys next time.